The audacious offer. Maya Chen had always believed that the best deals came from finding problems others couldn't solve. At 17, she'd already earned a reputation in the underground engineering circles of New Singapore Station for fixing the unfixable. Her latest target sat before her now. A Krillian merchant vessel with one of the most advanced quantum core drives in known space. The problem wasn't getting to Kevor's shop. Any human could walk into the merchant district of Centauri Prime. The challenge was getting the proud Krillian to take her seriously. Maya adjusted her toolkit, straightened her worn jacket, and strode through the holographic entrance displays with practiced confidence. Kevor's shop was exactly what she'd expected. Immaculate, traditional, and radiating an air of exclusivity that made most potential customers turn away at the door. The Krillian himself stood nearly 3 meters tall, his iridescent scales shifting from deep blue to purple as he turned to regard her with 4 golden eyes. His ceremonial merchant's robes bore intricate patterns that Maya recognized as quantum field equations, a display of both status and technical expertise. "I can fix your quantum core stability issue," Maya declared without preamble. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Kevor's scales rippled with what Maya would later learn was a mixture of shock and outrage. "You dare to suggest my vessels require repair?" His voice resonated with harmonics that made the display cases vibrate slightly. "These are the finest ships in the quadrant, certified by the High Council itself." Maya pulled out her diagnostic tablet, projecting a holographic representation of the quantum field fluctuations she'd recorded from outside the shop. "Your secondary containment field has a phase variance of 0.03 microns. Small enough to pass inspection, sure, but it's causing a cascade effect through the primary matrix. Give it another 1,000 light years, and you'll start seeing performance drops." The Krillian merchant's lower arms twitched toward what was presumably a security alert panel. "You collected unauthorized scans of my merchandise." "I collected public emanations from a public space," Maya corrected, continuing to manipulate the hologram. "And I'm offering to fix it. In exchange, I want one of your ships." The temperature in the shop seemed to drop several degrees. In Krillian culture, ships weren't merely commodities. They were works of art, each one representing centuries of refined engineering tradition. To suggest a mere human could improve upon their design, let alone demand one in exchange, was beyond insulting. Kevor's scales had shifted to a dangerous crimson. "You have no concept of what you're suggesting. The mere act of offering to fix a Krillian vessel is grounds for quantum field collapse in 3, 2, Maya counted down, eyes on her tablet. Right on cue, the holographic displays throughout the shop flickered. Just for a moment. But in that moment, Kevor's scales went from angry red to pale yellow. "That's the cascade effect I mentioned," Maya said quietly. "I can stabilize it, or you can wait until it manifests in front of a customer. Your choice." Kevor moved with surprising speed for his size, towering over Maya. "You think you can threaten me, human. I think I can help you," Maya replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "And I think you're smart enough to know the difference." The standoff lasted several long seconds. Finally, Kevor's scales settled into a more neutral blue. "You will explain exactly how you detected this supposed flaw." "Happy to," Maya said, already pulling tools from her kit. "But first, we should probably stabilize that containment field before it." Another flicker, stronger this time. Kevor's secondary arms made a gesture that might have been the Krillian equivalent of throwing them up in exasperation. "You will touch nothing without my direct supervision," he declared. "And if you cause any damage—" Maya was already heading toward the ship in question, a gleam in her eye. "Trust me, Kevor. This is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." She had no way of knowing that she'd just initiated one of the most unusual apprenticeships in Krillian history, or that within 24 hours they'd both be running for their lives. Pride and prejudice among the stars. The next 6 hours in Kevor's shop challenged everything the Krillian merchant thought he knew about human capabilities. Maya worked with a precision that defied her youth, her hands moving through the quantum field interfaces as if she'd been born to it. More unsettling still was her intuitive grasp of principles that had taken Kivor decades to master. "The problem isn't the containment field itself," Maya explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "It's the harmonic resonance between the primary and secondary matrices. The traditional Krillian configuration assumes perfect quantum alignment, but space isn't perfect. You need flexibility." Kivor watched as she manipulated the quantum fields with a fluidity that seemed to violate several laws of physics. That approach goes against centuries of established doctrine. "Doctrine didn't build the first faster-than-light drive," Maya replied, not looking up from her work. "People did. People who weren't afraid to try new things." She paused, realizing how that might sound to a Krillian. "With all due respect to tradition, of course." A soft chime indicated that the quantum core had accepted Maya's modifications. The holographic readouts showed stability levels that Kivor hadn't seen since the ship left the shipyards. Against his will, he felt his scales shifting to a shade of impressed azure. "How did you learn to do this?" he asked finally. "Humans haven't had access to quantum drive technology for more than 2 generations." Maya's hand stilled for a moment. "My parents were quantum engineers on the Europa project. They believed in teaching by doing." She resumed her work, but her voice had grown quieter. "When the accident happened, I had to figure out the rest on my own." Kivor's secondary eyes narrowed. The Europa project. The failed attempt to create a human-designed quantum drive. The explosion had claimed 12 lives and set human quantum research back by decades. "You were there." "I was 10. Maya's fingers never stopped moving across the interface. "Found out I had a talent for seeing the patterns. The way energy wants to flow. Started small, fixing shuttles, tuning engines, worked my way up." The Krillian merchant found himself reassessing the young human before him. He had assumed her confidence came from ignorance. Now he wondered if it came from something else entirely. The kind of knowledge that could only be earned through loss. "Your modifications," he said carefully, "they are unorthodox, but effective." Coming from a Krillian, this was practically effusive praise. Maya finally looked up, a small smile playing at her lips. Was that almost a compliment, Kivor? Before he could respond, a shadow fell across the shop's entrance. 3 figures stood in the doorway, their environmental suits bearing the insignia of the Quantum Technology Regulation Authority. "Merchant Kivor," the lead figure announced, their voice distorted by their helmet speaker. "We detected unauthorized quantum field manipulations at these coordinates. You will submit to an immediate inspection." Kivor's scales rippled with alarm. Unauthorized modifications to quantum technology carried severe penalties, including the revocation of his merchant status. He turned to warn Maya, but she was already gone, vanished into the shadows of the shop's back room. The inspectors advanced, scanning devices hovering before them like mechanical insects. Kivor drew himself up to his full height, his merchant's robes settling into formal lines. He would handle this with traditional Krillian dignity. Then one of the scanners beeped, and a mechanical voice announced, "Human genetic traces detected. Recent activity. Probability of unauthorized technological access, 89.2%. Kivor felt his scales shift to a pattern he hadn't worn in decades, the colors of a decision that could not be undone. The human girl had proven her worth, not just as an engineer, but as someone who understood the true spirit of innovation that his people had forgotten in their dedication to tradition. "My apologies," he said to the inspectors, one hand sliding beneath his ceremonial robes. "But I'm afraid this inspection will have to be postponed." He pressed a sequence of hidden controls on his merchant's bracelet. Throughout the shop, quantum field generators began to spin up, their harmonics building to a crescendo that would temporarily disrupt every scanner in range. As alarms began to blare, Kivor allowed himself a very un-Krillian smile. Perhaps it was time for some traditions to evolve. The Hunter's Shadow. Centauri Prime's maintenance tunnels were a maze of pipes, conduits, and forgotten service passages, perfect for someone who needed to disappear. Maya crouched in the shadows, her diagnostic tablet showing the chaos unfolding in Kavor's shop above. The quantum pulse had worked better than expected, scrambling not just the inspector's equipment, but half the security systems in the merchant district. "You have an interesting way of solving problems." Kavor's voice emanated from her comm unit, barely audible above the station's alert klaxons. "Says the merchant who just EMP'd his own shop," Maya whispered back, checking the tunnel junction ahead. "You didn't have to do that, you know." "You prove your worth," Kavor replied, his harmonics carrying an undertone she hadn't heard before, something almost like amusement. "Besides, those bureaucrats have been trying to restrict innovation for too long. Sometimes tradition needs a good shock to remember its purpose." A shadow moved at the far end of the tunnel. Maya pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The figure that passed was definitely not station security. The armor was too advanced, the movement too practiced. "Kavor," she whispered once the figure had passed, "I don't think those were regular inspectors. The way they moved, their equipment, they're hunters." The comm crackled with what might have been a Krillian curse. "The Quantum Technology Regulation Authority doesn't have jurisdiction here without filing intent with the Merchant Guild first. Someone else is using their authority as cover." Maya's mind raced. "The Europa project. They think I have data from it, don't they?" "The explosion was never fully explained," Kavor confirmed. "If you inherited your parents' research." "I didn't." Maya cut him off. "Everything was destroyed. All I have is what they taught me, what I figured out on my own." She paused, checking her tablet again. "But try explaining that to corporate bounty hunters." The tunnel lighting flickered, and Maya's tablet screen filled with static. "They're using quantum dampeners," she realized. "Trying to cut off our communications. Get to Bay 17. Kavor's voice came through the interference. "The ship you were working on, I've unlocked the security protocols. If you can reach it." The comm died in a burst of static. Maya took a deep breath, remembering her father's words. "Engineering isn't just about fixing machines. It's about understanding how things want to work, then helping them work better." The hunters wanted to use quantum technology to trap her. Fine. She'd show them how humans adapted. She pulled tools from her kit, quickly modifying her tablet. The hunters' quantum dampeners operated on standard frequencies, but with a few adjustments, she could use their own field to create a feedback loop. It wouldn't last long, but it didn't need to. The modified tablet hummed to life, its screen showing overlapping quantum fields like ripples in a pond. Maya smiled. Time to make some waves. She triggered the device just as heavy footsteps rounded the corner behind her. The effect was immediate. Every quantum-based system in range went haywire. Emergency lights strobed, gravity plating fluctuated, and the hunters' sophisticated armor locked up as their quantum-assisted servos failed. Maya ran, her boots magnetic locking to the deck as artificial gravity wavered. She had maybe 2 minutes before they adapted. The path to Bay 17 was a straight shot through the merchant district's main concourse, exactly where they'd expect her to go. So she went up instead. The maintenance shaft was tight, never meant for human access, but Maya had learned long ago that impossible usually just meant nobody's tried hard enough. She squeezed through gaps between power conduits, used maintenance drones as stepping stones, and at one point swung across a 3-meter gap using a loose power cable. She emerged into Bay 17 just as the hunters burst in through the main entrance, their armor smoking slightly from overloaded circuits. The ship sat ready, its quantum core humming with the modifications she'd made earlier. "Stop right there." The lead hunter's voice boomed through their helmet speakers. "That technology is corporate property. Surrender now." And Maya was already running for the ship's access ramp. "Kavor," she broadcast on all frequencies, hoping he could hear, "I hope you meant what you said about tradition needing a shock." The hunters opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling past her head. Maya dove through the ship's airlock, rolling to the control panel. Her fingers flew across the quantum interface she'd modified hours earlier. The ship's systems responded instantly, recognizing her patterns. As the hunters charged up the ramp, Maya initiated the quantum core's startup sequence, with one key difference. Instead of the standard Krillian protocols, she used the variations she discovered during repairs. The ship came alive with a roar that shook the entire bay. Unauthorized startup detected. Station security alerts blared. Emergency lockdown initiating. But Maya was already ahead of them. The quantum core spun up faster than any Krillian ship had ever managed, its modified fields bypassing the standard safeties. Bay doors began to close. Too late. The ship shot forward, threading the narrowing gap with centimeters to spare. Behind her, Maya heard the hunters' frustrated shouts cut off as the airlock sealed. She had the ship. Now she just had to figure out how to fly it, preferably before the station's defense systems locked on. And somewhere in the chaos, she had to find Kavor. Because despite everything, despite the danger and the madness, one thought kept running through her mind. She finally found someone else who understood that rules were meant to be improved upon. Breaking point. Space crystallized around the stolen ship as Maya pushed the quantum drive harder than any Krillian vessel had ever been pushed before. Warning indicators flashed across the holographic displays, their urgent red symbols reflecting off the viewport as she wove through Centauri Prime's defensive grid. "Come on," she muttered, fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "Show me what you can really do." The ship responded like a living thing, its modified core humming with possibilities that no traditional Krillian engineer would have dared to explore. Maya had done more than just fix the stability issues. She'd awakened something in the quantum matrix, a potential that had always been there, waiting for someone willing to see it. A proximity alert screamed. 3 patrol vessels dropped out of quantum space behind her, their weapons already charging. On her tactical display, she could see more ships moving to cut off her escape vectors. The station's defense AI was learning, adapting to her maneuvers. Her comm crackled to life. "Impressive flying. Little thief." The hunter's voice was cold, professional. "But you're only delaying the inevitable. That ship belongs to the Quantum Technology Regulation Authority now, just like everything else from the Europa project." Maya's hands tightened on the controls. The Europa project was about innovation, about pushing boundaries, not corporate control. "Your parents were naive," the hunter replied. "They thought quantum technology should be freely shared. Look where that got them." The words hit harder than any weapon could have. Maya's vision blurred, memories of fire and screaming quantum fields threatening to overwhelm her. Then another voice cut through the chaos. "Maya." Kavor's distinctive harmonics filled the ship's cabin. "Whatever you're planning, do it now. I can't hold them off much longer." The tactical display shifted, showing a new contact, Kavor's personal shuttle, running interference between her and the patrol ships. His presence shocked her back to focus. He'd risked everything, violated centuries of tradition, to give her a chance. "Hold on, Kavor," she broadcast back. "I'm not leaving without you." The hunter's laughter filled the comm. How touching. The great Krillian merchant, throwing away his status for a human child. "Your whole species has gone soft, Kavor." Maya's eyes narrowed. They thought they had her trapped, hemmed in by the station's quantum dampening fields. But they'd forgotten something crucial about humans. When cornered, they got creative. Her fingers flew across the interface, implementing modifications she'd only theorized about. The quantum core's hum changed pitch, harmonics shifting into frequencies that made her teeth vibrate. "What are you doing?" Kavor demanded, his shuttle rocking from weapons fire. "Those patterns, they're impossible." "Impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough," Maya replied, grinning despite everything. "Remember what I said about flexibility, about how space isn't perfect." She took a deep breath, remembering every lesson, every midnight repair job, every pattern she'd seen in the quantum fields. Traditional quantum drives try to force perfect alignment, But what if instead she executed the final command sequence? For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality hiccuped. The quantum core didn't just power the ship, it rewrote local space-time, creating a bubble of possibility where Maya's impossible modifications became, briefly, the new laws of physics. Warning klaxons screamed as every safety protocol was simultaneously violated and validated. The patrol ship's quantum dampeners, calibrated for standard field configurations, might as well have been trying to stop a supernova with a paper fan. Maya's ship slipped through their net like smoke through fingers, dragging Kavor's shuttle in its wake. Impossible. The hunter's voice cracked with rage. Those modifications, the strain should have torn the ship apart. Maybe by your rules, Maya replied, as space itself seemed to bend around her vessel. But I learned a long time ago, the universe doesn't care about rules. It cares about what works. The quantum bubble collapsed just as they cleared the station's defense perimeter, the backlash sending cascading failures through the pursuing ship's systems. Maya's modifications had worked perfectly. Once, the quantum core was already recrystallizing into more stable patterns, but it had been enough. Kavor's voice came through clearer now, tinged with what might have been awe. In all my centuries, I've never seen quantum fields manipulated like that. You didn't just break the rules. You proved the rules were wrong. Maya allowed herself a small smile, even as she began calculating their next move. They weren't safe yet. The hunters would regroup, and now they'd seen what she could do. But for the first time since her parents' death, she didn't feel alone in her understanding of how the universe could be. That's the thing about quantum mechanics, she said, as stars streaked past the viewport. Reality is whatever you can prove it to be. And I'm not done proving things yet. The quantum core hummed beneath her feet, ready for whatever she asked of it next. Behind them, Centauri Prime dwindled into the distance, its perfect order disrupted by one human girl who dared to see beyond tradition. And somewhere ahead lay answers. About the Europa project, about her parents' death, about the true nature of quantum technology. Maya exchanged looks with Kavor through the comm screen, seeing in his shifted scales the same determination she felt. They'd wanted her knowledge of quantum technology. Instead, they'd given her something far more dangerous, a purpose, a new understanding. 3 days after their escape from Centauri Prime, Maya stood before the Krillian Merchant Guild's High Council, her modified quantum core projections floating in the air around her like a constellation of possibilities. Kavor stood at her side, his scales shifting through patterns that hadn't been seen in the council chambers for generations, the colors of change, of revolution, of necessary chaos. The data is irrefutable, Maya concluded, gesturing to the swirling quantum patterns. Traditional drive configurations work, yes, but they're using less than half their potential. By allowing for adaptive resonance, by embracing imperfection instead of fighting it, we can achieve efficiency ratings that were thought impossible. The council chamber hummed with subsonic harmonics as the gathered Krillian elders communicated in frequencies too deep for human ears. Maya caught Kavor's subtle gesture, the equivalent of a reassuring nod. Finally, First Merchant Varel spoke, her ancient scales rippling with complex emotions. You have violated our most sacred traditions, stolen our technology, corrupted one of our most respected merchants. She paused, all 4 eyes fixed on Maya. And in doing so, you have proven that our traditions have become chains rather than foundations. A murmur ran through the chamber. Varel raised her primary hands for silence. The hunters who pursued you have been exposed. They're true masters, corporate interests who would monopolize quantum technology, have been revealed to the Galactic Council. Your parents' work on the Europa project, it seems, threatened more than just tradition. Maya's throat tightened. They sabotaged the project, caused the explosion. Evidence has been uncovered, Kavor confirmed softly. The same corporations that funded the Quantum Technology Regulation Authority. They feared human innovation would advance too quickly, break their control over quantum technology development. They should have feared human stubbornness instead, Maya replied, managing the small smile. We don't give up easily. Viril's scales shifted to a pattern Maya hadn't seen before. No, you don't. Which is why the Council has reached a decision that will change both our people's future. She rose to her full height, her ceremonial robes shimmering with quantum equations. Maya Chen, you are hereby granted the title of Master Innovator, a new rank within our guild, created specifically to recognize those who can bridge the gap between tradition and progress. Maya blinked. What? Your modifications to the quantum drive will be studied, refined, and implemented across our fleet, Virel continued, under the joint supervision of yourself and Merchant Kavor, who has also demonstrated that wisdom sometimes requires breaking with the past to serve its true spirit. Kavor's scales flushed with pride and something else, perhaps relief that his gamble had paid off. Maya felt tears threatening and quickly blinked them away. She had a reputation to maintain, after all. There will be those who resist these changes, Virel warned. The corporations who sought to control quantum technology will not easily surrender their ambitions, but they have underestimated both our peoples. Krillian tradition and human innovation, working together. Her scales rippled with amusement. They won't know what hit them. Maya's hand drifted to the quantum interface panel she'd modified, remembering how it had felt to break through those barriers. To prove that impossible was just another word for not yet. When do we start? We already have, Kavor replied. The quantum core modifications you made during our escape, they're still active, still evolving. The ship has been learning, adapting, just like us. Maya grinned. My parents always said the best engineering creates possibilities nobody's thought of yet. She turned to Virel. I accept the position, but I have one condition. The first merchant's scales rippled with curiosity. Oh, the Europa project was about sharing knowledge, about pushing boundaries together. Whatever we develop, whatever we discover, it has to be available to everyone. No more corporate monopolies, no more artificial restrictions. Innovation belongs to those willing to imagine something better. Virel was silent for a long moment. Then her scales shifted to the deepest, richest blue Maya had ever seen. The color, she would later learn, of absolute certainty. The Krillian Merchant Guild agrees to your terms, Master Innovator Chen. Let it be recorded that on this day, we chose to embrace change rather than fear it. She gestured to the quantum projections still swirling around them. Now, perhaps you could explain exactly how you achieved that rather interesting spatial distortion during your escape. Several of our physicists are still trying to understand how it didn't tear the universe apart. Maya exchanged looks with Kavor, seeing in his expression the same excitement she felt. The universe was full of possibilities, just waiting for someone stubborn enough to prove they were possible. Well, she began, her fingers already dancing across the quantum interface. It all starts with understanding that perfect order isn't always the answer. Above them, the quantum fields danced with potential, a testament to what could happen when tradition and innovation learned to work together. And somewhere, Maya liked to think, her parents were smiling, knowing that their dream of shared knowledge and boundless discovery lived on in ways they could never have imagined. The future, after all, belonged to those who dared to rewrite the rules.